All right, check. 1, 2. Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Dunn!
Welcome to the gallery on Main and to the Storytellers, Truth or Fiction. Mine will be truth. But we really appreciate you coming out here tonight and supporting the Falmouth Police and supporting the gallery and supporting these storytellers. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring out Mary Chris Kenney. Mary Chris, come on out here, tell us a story.
Take me out to the park. I don't care if I never get back. You know the song. Right. I bet you'll never guess what I am.
A dancer for the Moonlighters.
There you go. Any Boston Red Sox fans here? Anybody from New York? Yeah. I still love you. No matter what they say, I am not one of those Red Sox fans. Because I will tell you the God's honest truth. Was this light blinding you? It just must be my beauty. They're blinded over there, blinded by the light. You want to come over, sit over here? Or here, out of the light? Anyways, what's the deal? Nah. This is a story about, yeah, here we go. Back on the track. In 1962, I was on my back stoop trading baseball cards with my friends. We weren't trading Red Sox cards, I'll tell you, back in 1962. Because who the heck knew who was playing for the Red Sox? I mean, we heard some of the players, but we all knew who played for the New York Yankees. Yogi Berra, Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle. See, it's all good. We're into this whole thing. But why have I decided in my life to be a Red Sox fan? I mean, if you know the history of the Red Sox, can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah.
All right. Oh boy, I've never been accused of being quiet. Why am I a Red Sox fan? Well, one hint could be because I am the youngest of a family of 7 with 6 brothers. So what was always on the TV there, folks? Yes, that's right. The Red Sox. And being a Red Sox fan from your childhood, you learn about a lot of ups and downs. Let's just start 1967. Yes. We remember that. Yep, Jim Lomberg, yep, pitching. Yes, and we all still hear that hit on the head with Tony Caligiero. Yep, that was quite a year. And I was in junior high at Catholic school, and the nuns were very smart because they realized, are we reverbing here a little bit? Okay, yep. Anyway, that they weren't going to get the attention of any of the kids because we all were skipping school to get into Boston. So they decided to use Red Sox statistics for the math. And they had us memorize the numbers of the players and who was on. And that was the time when TVs were allowed to be brung into school. Remember they used to wheel them in and everything? And so that was it. If we were very good, we got to watch Red Sox on TV. Kurt Gowdy. That was really a thrill. But we know what happened in 1967. Yeah, dreaming the impossible dream. And it goes on, doesn't it? Yes, up 78. Yes, Bucky Dent. Yeah. Wasn't that funny? That was Mike Torres that pitched that, who we won with back there the year before. We don't want to go into that. But that was a big thing. Yes, 78. And then we came to 86. These are like, you got to understand this, New York fans. This is like all the death tolls. These are like little knives that are stabbed into Red Sox fans. Now, even wives here, if you're not Red Sox fans, and you're like, what is the appeal? I have to tell you, it's the drama of the Red Sox that links you in. You know, when you see your husband the next day, or you might be reversed like it is in my family. My husband is not a big sports fan, but he knows what it's like when I'm walking around like in a daze because the Red Sox have been playing out there in California. Before. What's wrong with you? I don't have any sleep. I had to stay up because, of course, they don't start winning until the bottom of the ninth, right? The big comeback, and you get to watch everything. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. So let's move ahead a little bit. So Mary Chris moves to Cape Cod. I lived outside of Boston. I think you could probably pick up the Boston accent. Here, I was born in Boston. But yeah, I moved here in 1988. And it was an eye-opening experience. I feel like I want to block the light for you over there, these people.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, okay. Anyway, 1988, moving here to the Cape. And I had my son, who was a Red Sox fan, of course, die hard. And I said to my neighbors there, I moved to Sandwich, and I said, hey, I'm going up to Fenway Park to see the Red Sox. And they're like, you going over the bridge? I said, yeah, that's where the park is. You're going up to Boston? Yeah, I'm going to Boston. Oh, giddy up. Going to Boston. Well, this was the tipper. They said, you better put your money in your sock because you're going to get mugged. Thank heavens I wasn't, have my fears control me, I said, no, I'm going up there. And that's what I did. And down here on the Cape, I found somebody who also was a die-hard Red Sox fan, a transplant actually, from outside of Seattle, this woman, Loretta, who had 9 boys and 2 girls. And when they were giving her a gift, she said, don't you be giving me any little knickknacks, I want sports tickets. So I was a happy recipient of the tickets. She and I went to the right field grandstand up there just above the pesky pole. You all know Johnny Pesky. When I met Frank Malzone, he was very upset that Johnny Pesky got all that notoriety. He said, I was the Golden Glove. Well, anyway, so that's where we were, right field grandstand. And we were watching before all this magic started happening, but you could feel it. Remember back in 2003? Cowboy Up, right? Ah, listen, the fever was going and going. It was great. Now here I was down here in Falmouth, where can I watch the Red Sox? Where's a good place besides your basic bedroom or your living room or whatever? I want to be among the people because that's the whole thrill of watching baseball, is to be out with other crazed baseball fans. We can all suffer together. So I found the most perfect place, and I found that it was around since 1936, and if any of you are a long-time Falmouth residents, you probably remember Jake's Tap. Billy Soares, proprietor. And that was it. It's a sports person's dream. That place was great. If you didn't get a chance to walk in there, I feel very badly for you. Because, there's a lot of places that call themselves sports places right now and get the big TVs and such. I hope I'm not boring you over there. Okay, good. Okay, I can talk about other subjects, but it's Boston Red Sox today. Okay, nevertheless, get back to it. It was a museum of sports memorabilia. Way back there. Seriously, to go and see the Red Sox win and lose at Jake's Tap was a thrill. So, of course, we know the story of what happened with the Red Sox there. I don't want to be anticlimactic right now. That's why you say, why does she have all these bags? See, because I was just going to share with you quickly, besides all the paraphernalia that I have on here, what a die-hard Red Sox fan goes through. Here we are up to 2004, I'm bringing you there. So I'm trying to say, okay, I got to tell these people all about being a Red Sox fan. What can I wear? What do I got here? Okay, let's see. Go into every game with my backpack, which had all these things on it, but they make them cut now because of security. And I said, oh, jeeves, which hat? Which hat should I wear? I got multiples here. Seriously. But if you are a fan of baseball, this hat is very important.
Yes, it is.
Okay? And when you wear this up around Boston area, can you see what it says there? CCBL. That's right. And we know the CCBL is responsible for many, many World Series wins, right? That's right. Poor Chris Sales on DL right now. Oh well. So that was one, but let's see, what else? Oh, and you have to have your sign, because you're out there in Fenway Park, and you want to be recognized, you know, because the camera's going around. So I thought I'd share with you some of mine. What one I got here? Okay, yeah. Remember this? Okay. Cape Cod Baseball League.
All right, okay. Love it.
Yeah.
Lou Merlone, Framingham, came from Framingham. That's right, so when Lou came down here and was playing, and my son actually got to take the time there with the Katua Kettleers he played for, and the Bourne Braves. And we know where Lou is now. Yep, sportscaster for WEEI, and he said it was the best baseball he ever had. What a dream come true, he gets to play for the Red Sox, and the first time up at bat, what does he do? Home run! Give that person a CI. Okay, quickly, the other back. So we go, I think I'd bore you if I showed you all my numbers. I have all sorts of baseballs signed by all sorts of people. Oh, I could have changed into my pants. Don't have any pockets in these things, Donnie. But then with Red Sox fans, that's the thing, every time they have a win, they get a t-shirt. You're like, oh my gosh, I have so many damn t-shirts. I wore this one tonight though. Veritech has special meaning for me because Veritech, as you know, if you were a Cape Cod Baseball League fan, played for the
Commodores.
He played for the Hyannis, then Mets,
Oh.
now the Hawks. That's all right. This isn't, it isn't a quiz or anything. I could wear a retired numbers shirt. I got that one. Except that one is already out of date because we got some more retired numbers since then. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not going to go through the whole diatribe. I got a whole bag full of, shirts here. Because, that's what had the ups and downs. We had American League win, then not a win, blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, I'm going to just come around to 2004. So there it is, 2004, it looks like it's going to be the one. Loretta and I are out there, we're just in disbelief. We have, when you're out in the, I don't know if you were ever a regular goer to Fenway Park, but it's like a family. The people that are there, if they're season ticket people, you get to know each other's names, how's the kids, have anybody getting married, blah, blah, blah. That's the deal, that's the way it was, right field grandstand. So we were all there. We were just linked in. And that the reality, that they were going to win. It was, but could we get tickets? Not for the World Series, it was out there in St. Louis, the last few games. So, where do you go? Jake's Tap. And what a night it was, folks. You remember October 27th, 2004. Crazy night. Actually, it was a friend of mine's birthday, and she does not care about baseball, but the fact that it was having a moon eclipse at the same time, she thought it was worthwhile at least to get out of the house. But I can't tell you how infectious it was to just be there among other baseball enthusiasts and diehard Red Sox fans at that place that night. It was almost like you could feel the generations before with us. Saying, yeah, we know what it's like. Don't get your hopes up. But then it happened. They won. We all just looked at each other in disbelief. This is it. It finally happened. The curse of the Bambino is done. No, net can be played in Boston again. You remember all that stuff. But it was just sensational. And that's the thing about baseball. I mean, not to say other sports, because I do like other sports, but there's so much drama and anguish and such with baseball, and a lot of long games. They're going to shorten those up, I heard recently. But just to get back to it, it's just the thrill of it all. And now we know what happened, 2007, 2015, and what's happening now.
Yeah.
It looks really, really good. Really, really, really good. But I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. So I won't get my hopes up. Thank you very much.
Clarkson. Thank you very much, Mary Chris. It is a good season. I have to say the Red Sox are on a roll, so we're hoping for those guys. But now I'd like to introduce a very funny guy, Mr. Wayne Soares.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here this evening, and I would like to put kudos for Karen and Donnie for this wonderful, wonderful venue that we have here on Main Street, and thank you for this wonderful event tonight for the brave men and women that protect our community. I certainly hope everybody can come back here again and support this. I just found out last week that I have to be in Afghanistan coming this fall in October. No, truthfully. Do we have any veterans here tonight? Just a show of hands. Any veterans? Sir? I know yes. Big round of applause, please, for thank you guys for your service for our great country. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. God bless. As I was home today, I was thinking about, this is the 13th anniversary that I took my family to Disney World. My daughter was 5, my 2 boys were 13 and 11. And as we were going to spend 10 days there, my daughter back in the day, she was a huge, if you're a parent or a grandparent, she was a huge Bear in the Big Blue House fan from many, many, many years ago. And it was just the rage of the Bear in the Big Blue House. Every time you turn on TV, it was always there. And when we were there at Disney World, we found out that we had an opportunity to go ahead and to see a show, which was in a huge amphitheater in Disney World, and it held about 1,500 people. And we were so excited, especially my daughter, who was a 5-year-old, she just couldn't contain her excitement. And we got there. What I didn't realize is, during the show, they had cameras stationed strategically, and they would show each child in the audience. And right before intermission, they would all get together and they would pick a child to come up on stage and be interviewed during the intermission. Guess who gets picked to be that kid? My 5-year-old daughter, Jessie, who wants me to come with her. So as we get there, now I'm starting to get a little bit emotional because my daughter, I'm obviously worried about her because she's going to be on stage for the first time. And I'm prepping her, saying, honey, you got to be quick, and you know, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And yeah. She says, Dad, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. And so at intermission, the curtain is already down. They bring my daughter out. I'm like, honey, good, okay, I love you. All right, do well. So she gets out and she sits down, and they had one of the actresses that were in the performance did a wonderful interview. And it was only about 4 or 5 minutes. My daughter hit every question perfectly, like she had won an Academy Award. She talked about her eyes. They're brown, just like my dad's. Now my lip is starting to curl because I'm getting emotional. Jessie, that's your name. How do you spell that? Jessie, because I'm named after my great-great-grandmother. Okay? Everything went fine until the last question, when the girl said, Jessie, that's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful dress that you have on. And my daughter didn't miss a beat. She looked right at the interviewer, the actress, and she said, thank you very much. My mommy says it's a real bitch to iron, too. Have you ever in your life wanted to go somewhere very, very, very quickly? There were 1,500 people in that amphitheater that night. For the next 4 days that we were in that park, we must have seen every single one of them, because their reaction was, good job, kid, good job, good job. So that's a memorable one. I had the real pleasure to work for ESPN Radio for about 10 years. In the infancy of my first contract, I did a little bit of the overnights on television. If you were up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, you might have seen a bald guy that looks like Shrek. But it was a great experience. I got a little bit, little cocky my first year there. And I was really brought down to earth by a wonderful story that I have to share with you. Part of working for ESPN, they always had you do a lot of appearances. And I actually got a corporate gig in Orlando, Florida. And as I finished my gig and my car brought me back to the airport, I sat there reading my newspaper. And I was having a coffee, and you ever get the sensation that someone is staring at you? And I looked around the terminal, and all of a sudden I made eye contact with this lovely, lovely young woman. Had to be in her late 70s, early 80s, okay? And I smiled at her, and she smiled back. The next thing, I go back to reading my paper, and the corner of my eye, she's coming down the aisle, and she gets right next, she taps me on my shoulder. It scares the daylights out of me. And she said, in this exact voice, "I just want to tell you that my husband and I thoroughly enjoy listening to you." Now, folks, the ego, right? Right away, you know, the radio voice kicks in. "Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. What's your name?" She says, "Well, my name is Mary, and you just come across so well, and we really, really love your voice." I said, "Well, Mary, thank you so much. You made my day." I said, "You have a great day." She said, "Oh, I will, because I'm going to go home tonight and tell my husband that I met the great Brian Gumble." For the next 5 minutes, I could not convince this woman that I was not Brian Gumble. I said, "No, Mary, my name is Wayne Soares." I went, "Oh, no, you're not." And she turned around and walked away, and still thinks that she's still with us, God willing. She thinks she's met Brian Gumble. I had an absolutely wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I worked as a publicist out in LA for about 4 years. And when I was there, we handled a great many people. A lot of comedians: Milton Berle, Buddy Hackett, Sid Caesar, Red Buttons. But one of the celebrities, the sportsman that we handled, who was retired at the time, obviously, was Muhammad Ali. And I had a chance at ESPN to meet him 2 or 3 times. And I've never found an individual that could take a young baby, an infant, in his arms, and just, the baby would not be nervous. He could make a senior so comfortable. He could just bring joy into someone's life. And I recently read a book. If you've read Ted Williams' autobiography by Lee Montville, talks about Ted and Muhammad Ali meeting. And Williams was blown away by the fact that Muhammad Ali said that he wanted to do, he said, "Ted, all I want to do is be able to leave this earth by having a positive legacy and bringing kindness into other people's hearts." And Williams was blown away by that. So, one of the great stories I like to share is back in the early 70s, when Ali was on his game, and I still, to this day, I would say that if he were in his prime today, Muhammad Ali, he'd be worth $1 billion as far as marketing and public relations, because he was so quick. And this is a boy that grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, had basically no education, like a 7th grade education, and he could go with Howard Cosell, who was a Rhodes Scholar, and go toe to toe, and he just had a personality that was unbelievable. So Ali's finishing a workout, getting ready for an upcoming fight with Joe Frazier, early 1970s, and a member of his entourage comes up to him and says, after a workout, "Hey champ, can I get a couple seconds with you?" And Ali says, "Sure, yeah." He says, "I got to ask you a big favor." And Ali says, "Sure, you want to see money? Go see Joe over here. He'll take care of you." He says, "No, big favor." He said, "You're doing this big interview next week with ABC's Wide World of Sports, and it's with Howard Cosell. You're about 10 miles from where my father is in a nursing home, and I'd just be a huge, lifelong favor if you could just go visit my dad." And Ali was always a person to take it to the next level. He said, "Well, you know what? We'll not only go for an hour," he said, "we'll go for the whole day. We'll bring a bunch of people," and true to his word, that day comes, Ali's tour bus pulls in, he gets out like the Pied Piper. All people behind him, 30, 40 people, and they're all chasing after him, and all of a sudden he gets into the nurse's station, and Ali was a magnificent magician. And he's got rope tricks, and he's got card tricks, and he's just just has everybody in the palm of his hands. He's led up to the old man's room, and he walks in, and the old man looks at him and says, oh my goodness, got a big, huge smile, and he's sitting in his chair, and Ali just sits down and makes him the most important thing in his life for about a half hour. And finally, it's time to go, and Ali gets up and goes over, takes the old man's cap off, and he gives him a kiss on his forehead, and he whispers in his ear. He says, hey, Pop, he says, you better get better, or I'm going to come back and whoop you, right? And everybody laughs, and Ali's let out. As he's leaving the nursing home, he walks by the TV room, and he looks in, and there's only one person in there. It's an elderly man, and he's sitting in a wheelchair. He's got a shawl on his legs, and he's got glasses, and he's got a cap on, and he's dozing. And Ali said to a very arrogant administrator who was escorting him throughout his little tour, who's that guy? He says, oh, that's Mr. Jones. He said, won't make a difference if you go in and see him. Ali said, why? Well, he's 95 years old. He's got Alzheimer's, losing his sight, memory. Won't make a difference. Ali said, well, you know what? It will to me. He said, yeah, but Mr. Ali, he said, it will to me, so please just go and put a chair right in front of the old man. And the chair is in front of the old man, and Ali sits down, he reaches over, and he gently touches the man's leg. And the old man is dozing, and his eyes come up, and boom, his head goes down. Ali does it again, second time, firmer, but still gently. And the old man's, his head comes up, and he looks, his eyes begin to flicker, and his mouth starts to open wide. And Ali says, hey, Pop, you know who I am? And the old man says, you're the champ. You're the champ. And he proceeds to break down and cry uncontrollably. And Ali takes out a handkerchief. And he says, Pop, that's okay. It's all right to be emotional. Don't worry about it. The old man says, oh, no, champ. He says, you have absolutely no idea. He says, for what you've done, the sacrifices that you've made, for what you've done for our people, oh, my goodness. He says, I have one living relative, and that is my daughter. My daughter is my most prized possession on the face of the earth. But I will tell you this, champ. Meeting you here today, outside of the birth of my daughter, this is the greatest moment of my life. And Ali is blown away by it. Blown away. Nobody's ever said that to him. He says, wow, Pop, he goes, I really appreciate that. You touched my heart. He said, but do me a favor. Tell me, before I leave here today, tell me, who am I? The old man doesn't miss a beat. He looks right at him. He says, you're Joe Louis. You're the greatest champ of the world. And everyone in Ali's entourage starts to scream and yell and curse the old man. And Ali became so infuriated that he screamed at everyone to get out of the room and wait across the hall in the boardroom. And he looked at the nurse and the administrator, and he gave him the devil stare. He said, do not move this man till I come back. And he tore across the hall. He came into the room. He slammed the door with such force that 2 pictures fell. And he let his presence sink in. He said, did you hear what that man said? He said anything. He said, did you hear what that man said? Finally, he screamed. Did you hear what that man said? And a member of his entourage, Bundini Brown, who used to write his poems, he said, yeah, that old goat, he called you Joe Louis. You're Muhammad Ali. You're the greatest champ, the greatest of all time. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Ali shook his head sadly. He said, did you hear what he said? And he pointed to his heart. And everybody froze. He said, outside of the birth of his daughter, his most prized possession, that meeting me was the greatest thing that would make his life complete. And somebody said, well, champ, you know, we didn't get that. And Ali said, well, I want you to get this, because we're going to stay here a little longer in this nursing home, and I'm going to go back with that man. And you remember one thing. For the rest of the time that we stay here, you remember, my name is Joe Louis. I love that story. I'm going to leave you with one. My first acting experience came almost 10 years ago. I was a publicist, as I mentioned, out in LA. I met a wonderful man, great character actor, one of the greatest of our generation. It was said by a gentleman by the name of Alfred Hitchcock, Ed Lauder. Ed was the first captain of the guards on the longest yard. He did a lot of Death Wish movies, Seabiscuit. He was just simply phenomenal. He was a better person than he was an actor, if you could imagine that. And Ed and I met back in '95, and we became lifelong friends until we lost him about 3 years ago to mesothelioma. But when my entertainment lawyer called me and said, hey, look, I got this it's an extra role, but it's with Ed, and it's also with Armand Asante. And I said, wow, to work, yeah, you have to pay your flight down. They'll take care of your accommodations. Not a lot of money, but you can go ahead and you can put this in your credits. So I was elated. And I get down there, and because of my size, not my acting ability, I was given a role, a speaking role, as opposed to an extra. Ed had more stories than Walt Disney. And every night after we filmed, we went back to the hotel, and Ed loved cheap beer, so he'd get a Pabst, and he would sit there, and he would just regale me with stories. And he told a great story about his relationship with Frank Sinatra Jr., who's no longer with us, who we lost several years ago. They enjoyed a 40-year relationship. They would go to the track together, they would share holidays together. And young Frank really, really liked Ed, and vice versa. And so Ed's mother, Mary, for her 85th birthday, diehard Sinatra fan, she wants to go and see Sinatra. So Ed makes a phone call to young Frank. Young Frank says, okay, the old man's playing at the Sands. Come down. He says, you bring your wife and bring your mom, and we'll set you up. So that night at the Sands, it's unbelievable. Sinatra is in great voice. And he recognizes Ed as one of the great character actors of our time, much to the delight of his mother and his wife. After the show, they want to go back and just say thank you for the great seats and for Frank and Big Frank acknowledging Ed throughout his performance. And young Frank says, why don't you come back and have dinner? Have dinner with the old man. He'd love to see you. Ed was a New York guy, and Sinatra always loved guys from New York that had talent. So they go back into the Sinatra room at the Sands is palatial. It's bigger than the Jack Nicholson room. It's bigger than the, it's Warren Beatty room. It's just huge. And they go back. And Frank is seated at the head table. There's about 25, 30 people. And Frank is Jack Daniels throughout his whole performance. Now he's drinking wine. And for the next 3.5 hours, the food and booze is like a Greek emperor. It's unbelievable. And it keeps coming and coming and coming. Finally, at the end of the night, Ed puts the word up. He says, hey, I just want to come up and say thank you to Big Frank. Is it okay? The word comes back, yeah. No problem. So, Ed, his wife Estelle, and his mother Mary, they approach Sinatra, who's now drinking Sambuca. Now, contrary to what you might have read, Frank was not a nice guy when he had a couple and somebody kind of got under his skin. He could be tough. But as they come up, Sinatra greets Ed warmly. Hey kid, how are you? Great to see you and everything. He says, Frank, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is what a wonderful evening, great concert. And he says, this is my wife Estelle, and this is my mother Mary. And Mary Lauder, God love her. She shuffles up like a young schoolgirl. She gets right in front of Big Frank. And in a little kiddie tone, she says, Mr. Sinatra, I saw you at the Statler Theater in Pittsburgh in 1952, and you were absolutely amazing. Now the table has grown silent. Big Frank looks down, swirls his snifter of Sambuca around. He takes a sip. For effect, he reaches out, he grabs Mary Lauder's hand, he puts his on top, and he looks at her with the steely blue eyes. And he says, Mary, the Statler Theater, Pittsburgh, 1952. I was on stage, you were off to the left in the third row. He says, you were the best looking dame in the whole place. And Ed Lauder says, right then and there, my mother completely peed her pants. She completely peed her pants. And I said, Eddie, come on. How many times has Sinatra used that story? He says 100 billion. But the one time that he did, my mother floated out of that casino, and she talked about that till the day that she died. I wish everyone here tonight a Frank Sinatra moment in your lifetime. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wayne. That was awesome. Really awesome. This is fun, you guys, sitting around telling stories. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Dunn. Come on up, Paul. And
Sure.
all right.
I don't know about you, but I'm sad. I'm sad tonight. I thought that Brian Gumble lived in Falmouth. Wayne, you really blew it, buddy. Anyway, also, Don was asking before about tonight. Is it fact or fiction? And I'm going to tell you that my story tonight is going to sound like fiction, but it's actually completely factual. Okay? Boy Scout honor. I'm going to ask you, what's in a name? Yeah, what is in a name? If you have a name like Nutsy Belzano, Nutsy Belzano, there could be a lot in it. Way back, in 1973, I was 21 years old, left college, had no idea what I was going to do with my life. Moved back to Fall River, and I needed a job. Nutsy owned a roast beef joint in Fall River, and he hired me. We were so much the odd couple. Here I am, 1973, it's still hippie-ish. I had my afro out to here, had a long beard, bell-bottom jeans, clogs, the whole bit. Nutsy was about 45 years old, and he was right out of Central Casting as for an Italian gangster. With the wavy dark hair, olive complexion. He had this mysterious bullet hole that went through here and came out the other side, and he was never in the service. And he just, he had these voices like this. I thought it odd, after the first week of working at Nutsy's, that there were so many black Cadillacs coming over from Providence. And these guys would get out of the Cadillacs and they're in their black suits, their black fedoras, their black sunglasses. And they would come in and they'd sit in the corner of the shop and they'd be whispering to Nutsy. And behind these guys were these big slabs of beef, also in their black suits. And they're glowering at everybody else in the store. Yikes. I thought it more odd that at the end of the first week, Nutsy says to me, "Oh, we got to talk. There's a problem with the cash register tapes." Uh-oh. Nutsy, what's the matter? Don't they add up? He starts to get a little nervous. Well, yeah, they do. All right, well, what can be the problem? Nutsy, what's the problem then? And now he's getting really nervous. He says, "Paul, why do you think I pay you so little?" Eh? So I'm sitting there thinking, and I look at him and I go, "Nutsy, do you want me to steal from you?" And he's like, "Mon Dieu, where did this kid come from?" But everybody that Nutsy hired, they all stole from him. So what he did is he paid them a little money, and they would make up the difference in the cash register. As long as it wasn't they didn't get too greedy, everything was okay. Only problem is, I wasn't doing that. And so it upset his world order. He couldn't take it. So from then on, at the end of every day, I'd open the drawer and I'd take out a couple of 20s and I'd wave them at him. And he'd go, no, I'm not supposed to see. Calm was restored at Nutsy's roast beef store. I thought it most odd that while we had roast beef sandwiches going out the front door, we had money, gems, and jewelry coming in the back door. Yes, it was one of those places. But we had a great time. I had a fabulous time that summer of 1973. I got to meet made men, hit men, loose men, looser women. I won $400 on a $2 bet at Lincoln Downs, Rhode Island at the track because the fix was in on horse number 7. I swear it went 20 yards past the finish line and just dropped dead. It made it. I also learned how to open many safes with just a bar of hardened steel, you know, boink. But only in the abstract. I know when I started out this story that, you know, Nutsy made this huge difference and impact on my life. And sometimes, maybe some of you, maybe you, are thinking that I turned to being a criminal. Couldn't be further from the truth. Meeting Nutsy changed the direction of my life completely. Maybe something like that has happened to you at times when you meet someone and the interaction with them has just changed the direction of where you were headed. And with me, it was just so completely in a different direction. Nutsy taught me a lot about respect and responsibility. One time these friends of mine came in and being the big shot behind the counter, I said, no, it's all right, I'll take it, you know, it's on me. So they had a wonderful lunch and, you know, I said, it's on me, fine. And they left and were very grateful. A couple hours go by and Nutsy says to me, well, hey, it was really nice having your friends come over and you can treat them for lunch, huh? And I go, yeah, it was Nutsy, you know, they're really nice people. And he says, Paul, I didn't see you take any money out of your wallet and put it in the register. Red face of shame and embarrassment. I said, Paul, next time it's great to treat your friends. He says, but please, he said, do it with your money, not mine. Aye, Nutsy, lesson learned. Nutsy loved my mother. My mother would come in for coffee or lunch, and he would see her out in the parking lot. He would make a beeline out to her car, open the door, bring her in, sit her down, get her whatever she wants, and he would never let her pay. When she left, he would turn to me and he said, Bud, your mom's a classy lady, like you. He said, that's how you treat classy ladies, don't you forget it. Yes, sir, Nutsy. But the most important lesson that Nutsy gave me was about making something of myself. He was after me all the time to get the hell out of Fall River. And he used himself as an example. He said, Paul, he says, I'm going to be owned by these goddamn morons in Providence till the day I die. He said, you got the opportunity to get out, go back to school, do something. Make something out of your life. Be somebody. And it was constant. And I had borrowed my dad's camera. And I was on the yearbook in high school and college. So on Thursdays, what we did, I set up my white bed sheet in the corner, have my little Smith Victor hot light, and I would take people's portraits if they bought a $5 lunch combo. The deal being, they would have to come back the next week, pick up their 8x10 print, and hopefully buy more food. You know, capitalism, it worked great. But it also allowed me the ability to feel confident about doing something, get a sense of who I was and I had something to offer. And so I did get out of Fall River. I went up to New England School of Photography in Boston, graduated, and started a career in advertising photography. So the years went by, and I started thinking about Nutsy. And I was thinking, you know, whatever happened to Nutsy? I owe him a lot. You know, he really put himself out all the time for me to make something of myself, to get out of Fall River, have a career, be somebody. So I said, I've never really thanked him. So I gotta get back, I gotta find him. I did some research, and I found out that yes, those morons in Providence really did own him forever, because he got caught running guns from New York City up to Boston, and he went to Danbury Prison where unfortunately he had a heart attack and died. So I never got to thank him. I never got to express my gratitude to Nutsy for everything that he did for me, except I can do it right now. So Nutsy, wherever you are, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you gave me of yourself, using yourself as an example, and here I am today. So Nutsy, thank you, and I love you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. That was a nice story. So we'd like to bring up Mr. Troy Clarkson now. All right. After Troy, we're going to take a little bit of a break. You guys can grab a drink, and Troy's got some books back there for sale if you'd like. We're just going to take a short break and power right through here. Mr. Troy Clarkson.
Thanks, Tony. I'm really happy to be here to share with you a personal story about how I became a writer. But before I do that, one of the wonderful things about events like this is that all of us are woven together in these stories. You know, I was sitting here thinking, as Chris was talking about Jake's Tap, that legendary icon of East Falmouth, Billy Soares, was actually the uncle of one of our storytellers, Wayne Soares. So let's hear it for Billy and for Wayne. And I was also thinking, as she was talking about the fact that probably nobody could name the players for the 1962 Boston Red Sox, there's actually someone sitting here in this room that could name almost every member of the 1962 Boston Red Sox. And that's everyone's favorite barber, Phil Stone. We should thank the folks from FCTV for recording this, and Andy Dufresne, if you're watching, Phil Stone is Falmouth's favorite barber. We're happy to let Andy take that #2 spot. So I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about how I became a writer. For those folks who don't know me, it's been my honor to be one of Falmouth's informal storytellers for actually 10 years now. I've been writing a column every week in the Falmouth Enterprise and telling stories about the people and the places that make Falmouth a community. And I've always been a writer, but for many, many years I forgot that. When I was a kid, a little kid, 8, 10 years old, my mother will tell you how old she is, because God love her, she comes, wherever I speak, my mom is always there beside me. So I'd like to just give a shout out to my mother, Donna Stone. So, I grew up in Fisherman's Cove, where actually Karen Ronaldo lives now, and when I was a kid, I wrote and published my own newspaper. It was called the Cove Chronicle, and I would write all the stories, and somehow charmed my way into the principal's office at East Falmouth School, and they allowed me to mimeograph the copies. Everyone remember those mimeograph machines? Mm-hmm. You had to turn the handle and get the ink all over you, and it smelled absolutely right. So I would write the stories and interview people in the neighborhood, and then sell the newspaper door to door for 25 cents. And I wrote poems. I actually wrote a play after my dad passed away, and writing was just such an important part of my life. And then I discovered alcohol, and that became the most important thing in my life for the next 25 years, and I never wrote again. And you know, when you think about that, I had this thing that was just part of me, and I left it behind. Now, it wasn't all bad. You know, I had the opportunity to be raised in this wonderful town, and after college came back here and got married, and had 2 wonderful children who are now 27 and 24. And along the way, when I was 24, I actually had the opportunity to get involved in this of ours and got elected to the Board of Selectmen. But imagine being 24 years old and someone who gets to sign the liquor licenses, who also enjoys alcohol. It was not a good mix. You know, I can remember sitting at the Peking Palace when it was the old Peking Palace, or Phil would remember it as the Oar and Anchor. Sitting there with my mentor and dear friend, Eddie Marks, God rest his soul, another Falmouth legend. And Eddie and I, after the meetings, would go down to the Peking Palace and close the place. And when they decided they didn't want to serve us anymore, we would both get up and walk over to the liquor license and point at our signatures and then go back to our seats and then this is a true story. I somehow managed on a regular basis to convince Eddie to stand on his chair with a cigarette lighter and light it as I sang the national anthem as we closed the bar down. So it wasn't all bad. I'll tell you another story. And because FCTV is here, I will not use any names to protect the innocent. Especially since I know there are some town meeting members in the room, Linda Davis. So a group of us, now I was 25 at the time, and the rest of these guys were 45 and 50. At the break at town meeting at the Lawrence School, we would all go up to the balcony, and somebody would be responsible for bringing the refreshments. And we would go up to the balcony at the Lawrence School to break at town meeting and all have a drink. And this one time that we did that, someone left their empty nip bottle in the garbage can on the balcony at Lawrence School. Again, I'm not using any names to protect the innocent. I'll be the only guilty one in this story. So someone found it and brought the empty bottle down to the moderator, Bob Marshall. And so Bob held it up, and I won't say whether or not Bob was up on the balcony, but his face might have been a little red, if you're watching, Bob. And he held up this empty nip bottle for everybody, the 700 people in the auditorium to see, and said, "I just want to remind everyone it's illegal to drink on school grounds." and so it went. But you know, those funny stories were fewer and fewer, and the challenges of alcoholism were greater and greater. And the day came where it stopped being fun and it stopped being something that I wanted, but something that I needed. And this is related to my story of why I became a writer, because I left all of that behind. Everything that was important to me, anyone that was important to me, and what became important to me was getting a drink. And that led me to a very dark place. It actually led me from my beautiful home in North Falmouth to a patch of woods on Dillingham Ave. But I was never that bright when it came to things like that, you know, so I decided one day to go live in the woods. But I picked a patch of woods right behind the Falmouth Police Station. It actually wasn't very difficult to find me. And so there was a search party out. Some of the folks here in this room were among the people that were out searching for me, and they found me. And to make a very, very long story short, you know, the day came where I wanted to actually stay sober more than I wanted to drink. And you know, one day at a time. I'm happy to report to you that was quite a long time ago.
Good for you.
But a lot of you in this room have heard that story, and I tell it a lot, and I tell it a lot for a reason, because people need to hear those stories, right? We need, there's so much pain and loss and death in our community. We need to hear, and we need to tell others that some of us are able to live a day at a time. And that's important, because a lot of what we hear is all of the tragic stuff as it relates to addiction. But there are people in the community, and we need to be willing to speak out, and willing to wear that badge, and carry that stigma that still exists in our community. But so anyway, you know, I was able to get sober, but I was 39 years old and pretty hopeless and pretty penniless, and still somehow had that wife and those two beautiful children in my life. And I got a phone call. You know, the previous speaker talked about someone that you don't expect making a difference in your life. And I got a call from a guy by the name of Mark Scala. Now, that name is probably not familiar to most folks in this room, but Mark is a wonderful guy, and at the time was the publisher for the Gatehouse newspapers. They were about to start a new paper in Falmouth called the Falmouth Bulletin. And Mark was an old family friend. His brother was my brother-in-law for many years. And so Mark called me up out of the blue, knowing that I needed a little hand up and a little help. And he said, "We're starting this new paper in Falmouth, and you've been around for a long time, and folks know you, so why don't you think about writing a newspaper column?" I had not written since I was a teenager. But I was desperate, and I was willing to listen. And so I said, "Sure." Now imagine a challenge for a guy like me who, you know, started reading newspapers to my mother when I was 3 and started writing shortly thereafter, and have always loved to talk and entertaining to perform. Trying to compress my thoughts on a weekly basis into 600 words. That sounds like a lot, 600 words, right? It's not. 600 words is very few. It fills up about one 8.5 by 11 sheet, single space, 12 font. I learned that over the years. But I started doing it and started writing every week for that Falmouth Bulletin. That paper is still around. And they do a wonderful job. They're a wonderful newspaper. I would suggest that the paper of record, however, in our community is the Falmouth Enterprise. It's been owned by the same family since 1929. The Huff family has been working hard to produce local news. Before that, it was called the Falmouth Local, and they started publishing in 1895. So since 1895, there's been a weekly newspaper in this community. Now, whether you agree with what's in it or not, that's really something important. I believe that local newspapers will never die, despite social media and online news, because people want to feel connected to their community. And so, you know, I never thought that I would write for the Enterprise, because Bill's sister, Bill Huff's sister, Margaret, who published the paper before he did, was very accurate and very fair and very honest. And so when she wrote an editorial accusing me of a red-faced tirade at a selectmen's meeting, she was right, because I was not nice and I was drunk. So my relationship with the paper was strained. But Bill called me up one day, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in my office in Plymouth. I worked in Plymouth at the time as the Plymouth County Administrator, and he called from out of the blue. He said, "Troy, this is Bill Huff. You really don't know me, and I know the answer to this question. I know you're going to say no, but geez, would you ever consider writing for the Enterprise?" And I didn't think about it. I immediately said, "Well, of course, it would be my honor." And it was that simple. You know, I had thought about it sometimes after I started writing the column for the Bulletin. I thought about maybe writing as a profession. I thought about, actually, someone approached me once about being a science writer, but I couldn't stand the thought of writing about meconium or something like that for the rest of my life. So, you know, that just never happened. But Bill called me up and said, you know, would you like to write for the Enterprise? And it was that simple, and I did. And every week for the last 10 years, I've never missed a deadline. I've been able to share the stories like we've heard tonight. Actually, I've written about a couple of your speakers. It's been my honor to write about Donnie and Karen and the amazing things that they've done. I've had the opportunity to write about Wayne and all of the good charitable work that he does. A couple of weeks ago, I was able to write about the tragedy that befell our community, but how not only those two brave young men stood strong, but our community rallied around them, and that's just amazing. I'm the brother and the nephew of Falmouth police officers, and how we saw this community rally together is not just important to me personally, but just vitally important to our community. And it's really my honor to be able to tell those stories. You know, there's an old Native American saying that people die twice. Once when they take their last breath, and once when their name is uttered for the last time. So I take it as my responsibility to tell those stories of people that I've mentioned tonight, people like Eddie Marks and Wayne Soares, and of course Wayne is still with us, but and Bob Marshall, and Andy Dufresne, and Phil Stone, and Linda Davis, and Judy Fenwick, and all the other amazing people in this room. They give their time to this community. Because I've learned over the years that it's those relationships, those interwoven relationships that make us a community. I've worked professionally in local government for most of my career, and I've been in a lot of communities and worked in a lot of communities, and there is no place like Falmouth. People with whom you can clap at that, go right ahead. Everybody should clap at that. Don't clap for me, clap for Falmouth. You wouldn't see a place like this where people like Donnie and Karen would give of their time to create a venue like this for no other reason than to benefit the community. And that's why, when Donnie mentioned my book, I'll just tell you very briefly about that. I was able, several years ago with the Enterprise, to publish a book about Falmouth, and it's an anthology of my columns, and we enlisted the support of Amy Rader and Paul Rifkin, a couple of photographers, and Paul Gardner, an artist, and put that together. A few years later, when one of my dearest friends' wives passed away, I started to try to cheer him up by sending him an inspirational quote every day. And he appreciated that, but after a while said, you know, you could probably write these yourself. And so I did, and I would send him an original quote every day. Then I started sending it to family and texting it to friends. And then my wife had the idea that we should publish them into a book, and so we did. So the title of the book is Out of the Woods. You can guess why that's the title. And then the subtitle is 365 Ways to Not Be a Dung Beetle. Now, a dung beetle, of course, exists for the sole purpose of pushing around the crap of others. And how many of us in the room know somebody in our lives like that? And if you're not raising your hand, you're not telling the truth, right? We all know dung beetles in our lives. And so this book is an inspirational quote a day to help us all not be dung beetles. But tonight, I'm not here to sell books for me. If anyone wants to buy a book, all of the proceeds will go to the Falmouth Police Relief Fund to support all of our men and women in blue in this community. We only have a few here, actually, so if you decide you want to support the fund and purchase a book and we run out, then I'll gladly deliver one to you. So let me finish with this. I was talking about how relationships are interwoven in our community, in this beautiful space, in this downtown village. The Harvard University conducted a study a while ago, and they started to follow 130 men almost 100 years ago. And they conducted a longitudinal study, and they wanted to find out what was the secret to longevity. And so they followed these young men throughout their lives, and then their children, and really studied what it was that allowed some people to live longer lives than others. And they published the results actually recently, a couple of years ago. And you can look it up online and read the results. And to many it was amazing, and to many it was a surprise. To me, it just confirmed what I think I've known all along. The secret to longevity for all of these people. Does anyone who's not related to me know? Anyone familiar with this study in the room? So what they concluded is that the secret to longevity is not your socioeconomic status. It's not your gene pool. It's not whether or not you eat carbs or sugar. The secret to longevity in all of these people was their ability to forge and maintain meaningful relationships. A medical fact that our ability to connect with one another, with each other, and to do that on a sustained basis will literally lengthen our lives. So, thank you. So that's why we're all here tonight. That's why amazing people like Annie Hart Cool, who does so much for this community, is here tonight. So that we can forge a relationship with each other and keep that going so that we'll all live longer lives. So I'm happy and grateful to be here to help you all live a little longer. And that's my story about how I became a writer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Troy. Appreciate that. So what do you think, guys? You want to just take 5 and take a quick break? But we're going to come right back, and we're going to have Mr. Mike Kasparian, president of the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, and myself and Annie. We're going to tell you a few stories. But stick around, please. Go on back and visit Liam back there. Have a drink. Well, thank you for hanging out with us. We're going to bring up Mr. Michael Kasparian, who is the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Falmouth here, and really looking forward to hearing it.
Thank you.
Here we are, Mr. Michael Kasparian.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. So I'll take a moment to plug the chamber for a second here. So, how many people live in Falmouth? I'm thinking it's mostly everybody. Any visitors here at all? Yeah, there are some visitors. Of course, you want to live in Falmouth. It's an amazing town. I want to talk a little bit about that, why it's so wonderful. And having the privilege and the honor of being the president of the chamber is great because I get to promote Falmouth. And the Chamber of Commerce really has become more like the Chamber of Community. We have such a strong community. And what Troy in particular was talking about, how everybody's connected, you know, everywhere in the world is 6 degrees of separation, but here in Falmouth there's 2 degrees of separation. And you know, one of the reasons why we like to come out and do these sort of things is to promote the town. Karen Ronaldo, one of the partners here at Don Cross, is on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. Not many communities do we have an artist on the board of directors. The Falmouth Police, who are benefiting tonight, the chief of police is on our board of directors. The schools are on our board of directors. And a lot of that was started by another iconic Falmouth personality, Mr. Jay Zavala, my predecessor. Good friend and mentor me, who when he took over the chamber, his mission was to make it a community connection, which it is. And in fact, we want to call it sometimes the Chamber of Community. But we're happy to do that and support our Falmouth Police, and I just want to give the chamber and all we do a little bit of a plug too. So, it's kind of interesting. We get up here, we do these things from time to time. We've told stories together, some of us, many of us. I see a young man here, so I want to say that there are some R-rated things in my story tonight. I'm going to do my best to keep it as clean as I can, but there might be some things that your imagination may run away from you. But I think you'll like it nevertheless. So, I know Nutsy because, not personally, but I'm from Providence. I know a lot of those morons from Providence, believe me, I know.
Federal Hill.
Yeah, from Federal Hill and all those places, that's right. Grew up in Providence, lived in Providence. Met my bride, Falmouth high school teacher, took her back to Providence. That didn't last long. We ended up back in Falmouth. So, back in here in 2005. We moved back here, it was great. And through time was commuting back to Providence, and then started working down here, eventually connected and became president of the chamber, and now I promote Falmouth. However, there are things about Providence I miss very, very much, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Also, people are talking about those people who have made a little bit of an impression on their lives, and this is kind of interesting. I'm going to talk about a neighbor of mine from Providence, and I miss very, very, very much. And I'm going to not mention his last name to protect the innocent. But, just quickly, here we are we live in North Falmouth, idyllic, we love it up there. The reason why we lived in North Falmouth was because when we moved down here, it was really interesting. We met with a realtor, and I had never really been to Falmouth, really, I mean a couple times. And we're driving, I was working in Warwick, Rhode Island, so anybody who's flown out of Green Airport knows it's kind of a drive from here. So my realtor, we would meet the realtor, and she'd say, I got this beautiful house, I want you to see it. It's down in Woods Hole. I said, Woods Hole, that sounds nice. I'd come over the bridge, I'd be driving and driving and driving, and it'd be like 20 minutes later, I'm like, this is a little bit too far. The next week she said, this great house in Wacoy over in East Falmouth. That sounds nice too. It's over near the Childs River. I said, Childs River, that sounds beautiful. So we're driving. So I took out a map and I drew a line at Thomas Landers. And I said, no more south than this, and that's how we ended up in North Falmouth. But I love North Falmouth. It's a wonderful neighborhood. I live in this great little neighborhood. There's 14 houses. A full-time neighborhood. Everybody's, you know, either a teacher like my wife, a scientist like most of my neighbors, a Chamber of Commerce guy like me, or a couple of retired people. But it's very idyllic. It's a wonderful place to raise my family. Of course, it didn't start that way for me. When I got out of college, I went to school in Providence, of course, and when I got out, my parents said to me, buy a two-family house, buy a multi-family house, because that's going to be a great way. Now, back in the days of the 11% interest rates when I bought my first house, that made a lot of sense. So anybody that's familiar with the city where I grew up, of course, we had these long avenues with streets that interconnected. And in the neighborhood, it would say, I don't know, 40% of the homes were single-family homes, 60% of the homes were multis, mostly they were owner-occupied. So I bought this nice two-family house on a T, and this is kind of important. So you got to visualize this T. There's two avenues, and there's a T. There's a Edge Street that goes like this, and on my street, Edge Street doesn't keep going. So I'm at a T, and I'm on the corner. And they're all 4,000 square foot lots, right? Or 6,000 square foot lots. 40 feet, 100 feet deep, house here, almost no yard here, with a two-car garage that they squeezed in around 1920. Next two-car garage, next house here. Okay, great. So we move in. I'm on the second floor, looking out the window one day. So I'm looking out my back window down that long Edge Street, over my garage to the other garage, and there's a guy in the yard who I haven't met. Comes out like this, obviously into lifting weights, gets out, puts the bench press on the lawn, and he's out there lifting weights. I said, oh, who's this guy? I don't know who this guy is. So I go to work, and I come home. This is truth, we're telling truth or not. Come home, guy comes over and says to me, Hey, I'm Gary. Can I borrow $20? I want to be a good neighbor, so I said, sure, this is back when everybody had cash, right? So I gave him $20. He said, I'll give it to you tomorrow. I said, okay, great. So I'm inside. My tenants had been living there for 14 years. Interestingly enough, they didn't want to buy the house, but they really wanted to, they raised their kids, they had 2 boys. So I was talking to them and I said, you know, what's the story with, oh, that's Gary. I said, oh, that's Gary. What was Gary? He said, Gary's a bank robber. I'm like, get out of here, really? He said, yeah, Gary's a bank robber. He robbed a bank. In fact, he just got out about a year ago. And I said, well, how's that true? I mean, how did that happen? He goes, well, you don't know the story. I said, no, I don't know the story. I just moved here. I don't really know. Even I grew up around the corner. And he said, well, here's the story. Gary was out imbibing and decided he wanted to rob a bank. So we get into line at Citizens Bank, Cranston, Rhode Island. He's standing in line. He ran into a woman he hadn't seen since high school. He said, hey, Sue, how you doing? Or whatever her name was. And started having a conversation with her. And they get in line. They call him up. He says, okay, hey, nice seeing you. I'll see you sometime. Oh, yeah, I'm living over on Edge Street with Dottie. His wife was on the school committee, by the way. 3 beautiful children. Goes up, hands her a note, give me all the money I have done. And runs out, and police come, and she's like, I know that guy. When they show up at his house, he's stoned in the living room counting the money. Pretty funny, huh? That's a true story, and he had gotten out. Well, Gary was a very interesting guy. Of course, he came, gave me the $20 back. Gave me the $20 back. And then I'd go over there, and he'd always be lifting weights outside, and he had 3 kids, and I'd pull up, and his youngest son, Garrett, I'd pull in, and he'd say, Garrett, Garrett! And he'd look at his father, and he'd say, what do you say? Hello, Mr. Kasparian. I'm like, hello, Garrett, how are you? Kelly, Kelly! Hello, Mr. Kasparian. Everybody had to be really polite. But you didn't want to get Gary mad. So the kids downstairs, one of the kids had a friend that would drop him off. So again, think of the neighborhood. You drive around, so the front doors are here on the house, and everybody, of course, anybody ever live in a tenement house? Anybody live in a 2-family house? You know how it works? From Worcester, so you know what it's like. You got a front staircase and a back staircase, that's how it works, okay? So most of the time you use the front staircase with the family, you know, or if guests, you use the back staircase. So this kid would drive around the corner and drop off the kid that lived on the first street, peel out, go up to the stop sign, take a right and go into the park. We lived on Roger Williams Park. Anybody knows that in Providence?
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, anybody knows Roger Williams Park. So, Gary comes over one day and says to him, he says, Stan, listen, tell your friend I don't want him peeling out anymore. Okay, the kids are trying to sleep. Oh yeah, Gary, yeah, whatever, okay. So we're sitting out there. We all had long stone walls along Edge Street. We'd sit out there when it got hot in the summertime. We're up on the 2nd floor. There's no air conditioning. We'd sit out there, have a couple of beers or whatever. Don't you know, the kid comes one day, drops off Stan. Stan gets out of the car, peels out, goes to the stop sign. We're sitting there, like, Gary like launches out of his house, down, the car's running, grabs the kid from the car, pulls the kid out, is punching the kid out, the car's still in drive, it's going, crosses the street, hits this tree, and it's just sitting there, it's just idling, and he's beating the snot out of him, right? I mean, it was the funniest thing in the world. So my tenant comes running out, he's like, Gary, don't do it, you're gonna let him noise. I told you I didn't want to. The kid's like, oh my God, he's like bleeding to death. It was amazing. So he lets him go, and he's like, and they're like, we should call the cops, we should call them. No. He says, no. I'm good, mister. That kid, of course, never peeled out ever again. Never did that. So as we get to know Gary, it was interesting. So one time we're sitting there, and we're living in the house, and we were in a real bind. We needed somebody to watch our daughter Phoebe, who's named after your daughter Phoebe. It's funny how we end up in these places together. But anyway, and there was nobody available. And my wife Daria was pondering what was going to happen. And of course, who comes over but Gary? And she says, oh, Daria, no problem, I'll watch the baby. Daria says, well, I don't think so. No, I'll watch the baby. Grabs the baby, right? I'll watch her. She's fine. Don't worry about anything. Okay. So we go out. My wife's, of course, a nervous wreck the whole time. We come back. He's got her in the porch swing, the whole thing, going back and goo-goo gaga. She liked orange popsicles. He got her an orange popsicle. It was wonderful. He was like the best babysitter in the world. But you didn't want to get her mad. So on the top of the street, we had another house. We always called this the house in question, because we didn't know what was going on in that house. there was a lot of drinking going on in that house. And the guy that lived there was a chef, and so he was out late at night, and I think he drank a lot of work. But anyway, he was very loud and boisterous. And one night, he was out there, he was being really, really loud, and of course, we're sitting in the front, and Gary comes down from his steps, and he walks over and he says to him, hey, do you mind keeping it down? You know, we're trying to, like, you know, we get some company or whatever. So Niles says, yeah, whatever, all right, I'll try to keep it down. They keep on, you know, doing whatever they're gonna do. And it gets loud again. So Gary comes out, he's stepping on his front porch. He comes out, of course that was wonderful too, back when everybody had a front porch, you know? And he comes out and he yells. Now, you know, it's 200 feet from his front door to, because he's gonna run the length of his house to my house. And he tells him, stop. So what does Niles do? You gotta close your eyes. Basically he says, go and blank yourself and everything. Well, to get up, you gotta go up these stairs and into the house. Gary launches off that thing and he starts running like it's a sprint, right? The guy, Niles, is like this. By the time he sees him coming, he's like this. He runs to get up the stairs, and just as he's going in, Gary gets behind him and puts his hand on the storm door. He can't open the door. Well, I can imagine, I can tell you what happened to Niles, right? Same thing that happened to the kid in the car. Very, very sad. Very, very sad. But nobody bothered anybody in the neighborhood because of Gary. Gary's one of those guys that was, you know, one of those guys that you would not mess with. Well, there are a lot of stories like that about Gary. But the thing that was the most interesting thing that happened with Gary, and the thing that reminds me the most of him, when I think back, is that there was a time, there was a accident in the park, in Roger Williams Park. And what ended up happening was there was a car accident, and this car hit a school bus. And it was one of those small school buses where they had like maybe 5 or 6 students in the school bus. And the bus burst into flames. And Gary happened to be out there on his run or whatever he was doing. And this guy single-handedly went in and pulled every one of those kids out of the bus and sustained all these burns all over his body. And it was really interesting, and it was really, really heartwarming, because after all that stuff that he had done, he got an award from the Providence Police Department. And it was really, really interesting. So, and it really was, you know, when you think about it. So when I think about, you know, this great idyllic life we have here and how much I love it, I do miss some of the excitement. I really do. I do miss it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, it's just so much fun. So I get to go to Providence every week now because my mom's kind of getting old. I visit her every Sunday, and it's kind of fun. You go to the market and we go and kind of hang out. And I drive by it every now and then, and Gary's still there, and he's still around. And we do see Gary from time to time, and it's fun to take the kids. And the stories you hear are the same. He still does the same stuff. But the funniest thing that I want to say, that this is the thing that was really like, I'll never forget this. So his daughter Kelly married an attorney from Atlanta, Georgia, whose father was a judge. So they're having a party at the house, and they invited all the neighbors. You know, it was like kind of like not an engagement party, but like let's get to meet the folks from Atlanta. So they came up and were sitting there, and at this point in Gary's life, all he's drinking is seltzer water. He's completely like, actually to Troy's point, he found that, you know, doing good things outweighed, you know, he really cleaned himself up. And I'll never forget this, standing with him one day, and he said to the judge, he said, you know, he said, how ironic, who would have thought this? He goes, here's your kid and my kid getting married, and here you are, you're a judge, and I'm an ex-con. What do you think about that? So, you know, it's kind of interesting. You know, my mother always told me growing up, don't judge a book by its cover, and all people are important. And, you know, in his own way, even though he did some crazy stuff, he had a heart of gold, and when you could count on Gary, you could count on Gary. So, thank you very much.
Great story, huh? I want to go hanging out with you. Providence, Gary. Well, I'm going to tell you a little story now. And I'm a bit of a risk taker, as you can tell from me being right up here right now doing this for the first time. But I thought I'd tell you, you know, about how to impress your father-in-law from Dublin, from Ireland, and when you're meeting him for the first time to get off the plane to marry his daughter. So there I was. It was 1990, and it was during the World Cup, which was a great time in Ireland to be there because it's just magical. When they're in the World Cup, there's nothing better to be around Ireland. And so I was there. I had 40 of my friends, and we went over, and we were like the World Cup team. I mean, we were just on a roll. I went over there. I came back 15 pounds heavier. I was a mess, but I had a great time. So, you know, I really wanted to ask my father-in-law for his daughter's hand in marriage because I was getting off the plane. You know, I thought it was the right thing to do. So we took a ride, and this was a couple of days into it, and he and I took a ride, and it was a nice moment. We took a little, you know, looking over a mountain there, and you know, out in Howth, a place called Howth, just south of Dublin. And so I did that, and it was all good, and we had a great time. And then Ireland went on to the quarterfinals, and we were singing in every pub, and we were having a hell of a time. And so then all my friends went home, and it came time for me to go to the west coast of Ireland, where he was from, which was called Connemara. And so we were out there, and we went drinking on a Sunday, and it was a great time. And over there, and it was a Sunday, and it was a place called the Greenfields Pub. And so you know, we're going along, and I'm well into my pints by then. So a couple of words for you here. The word slag. That means when somebody wants to slag you, they want to give you a hard time and take you down a peg or two. So, and if they're referring to you, they'd say you're a man, or you're a one. Look at your one over there. And so I'm there with my father-in-law, and we're having a hell of a time, and everybody's around. And in Connemara, it's really farmers. I mean, this is the west coast. This is the roughest part of Ireland. Not the roughest in terms of terrain, I would say. So we're over there, and we're in this place called the Greenfield Pub. And these guys from Connemara, and if you've been to Ireland, there's many different dialects wherever you go. It's pretty amazing. And so these guys are very tight-lipped. And they, you know, I'd be given my hand to shake, you know, the happy American or the Yank, they would call me. And they wouldn't reach out. They just give you the Irish nod. How's it going? I'd be like, I'm good. Yeah, all right. So I'll just pull my hand back here. And, so we're all standing there, and the kids are all in there. It's a Sunday. Everybody's after church, and we're going at it. We're drinking pints, and there's this kid next to me, and he's leaning on me. I'm trying to ignore him, but he's just leaning on me. And there's my father-in-law over there with all his older buddies, and they're all saying, who's your man? And they're all leaning on me. You know, he's leaning on me. So finally I said, how you doing? What's going on? He says, how's the crack? And I went, what? And the crack, you know, I'm thinking drugs. The crack in Ireland is, how's your conversation? How's the form? How are you doing? He says, how's the crack? I don't know, it's pretty good, you know. But he says, gee, you're a fit fella. What do you do in America? I said, oh man, you know, remember I told you I kind of live on the edge here, or wing it once in a while. So I said, well, I'm a musician. And if you don't know, I've been playing drums for probably 35 years. My father was a drummer, and my grandfather too. So I said, well, I play music. He says, music, is it? I said, yeah. And I had been playing in a few Celtic bands because my wife, being from Dublin, and we had been dating for 2 years. So I had the good luck of playing with a lot of good Irish players. So I was feeling pretty good. I said, yeah, I play a little Irish music. Irish music, is it? I said, yeah, you know, I fool around with the batteron, the spoons. The spoons, is it? And he goes, hey, barman, get this fella some spoons. Oh, man. I just froze, and the whole place froze. And in that moment, I thought, well, if I had to talk to God, I'd say, God, please help me, man. And he would have said, Don, Spoons on the bar? I mean, what are you talking about, Don? Oh, God, please. Just get me through this, because I don't really play spoons. I know that, Don. Don, I'm out. You're on your own. So, the bar came back. Everything's not frozen anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, so now his father-in-law is around me. My father-in-law, not his, but mine. And all his cronies are there, and he's mortified. He's like, oh my God, what's he gonna do? So they're all around me. I said, look, I just want to let everybody know, I don't play spoons like traditional. I play them on the bar like drumsticks. So I took the spoons over and I said, oh, here we go. So I just did a little Irish jig, and I'm like, and all of a sudden it froze again. And God came over to some guy and said, hey man, whip out your tin whistle and give this kid some help. And this is true. Some guy broke out a little tin whistle, and I had a session going right down there. And true story, man. And my father-in-law looks at me and he goes, Jesus, Donnie, you can put away the pints. And that's how I won my father-in-law over. So there you have it. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. You know, we're going to bring up somebody who I really enjoyed, Annie Hart Cool. I'm sure she's got a good story for us. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Good evening, everybody. So grateful to have you all here. So I have two really quick things I want to just mention before I tell you my story. The first is that when I first moved here, I was involved in an awful lot of theater on Cape Cod. This was 35 years ago. And one of my best things that I could talk about is the fact that I had 9 crazy ass stage kisses with Don Cross. I'm sitting here going, oh, how long ago was that? Anyway, he was just dating Fran, and she sat in the front row every night. And he was a merchant marine, and oh my God. Okay, enough about that. I love you, buddy. So we've known each other a long time. And the second thing I wanted to say was I had the good fortune of putting together, I'm a justice of the peace when I'm not selling real estate, and I had the good fortune of putting 7 couples together in the last 24 hours. Wow. So I am like someone, I married a Red Sox recently, and he said, you are the purveyor of love. I'm going to put that on my business card. I told him I'm taking it. I am so into that whole idea that I'm the purveyor of love. Anyway, so I married 7 couples in the last 24 hours, and it was just such a privilege. And one of my newlyweds are here. And they've been married about 3 weeks now. But what I didn't know, and I hope you don't mind if I disclose, one of the reasons they're here is, beside the fact that they love me. Right?
Honest. We love
you. Is that Ann's son is Ryan, the policeman who got shot. So they wanted to support him and support us in supporting him, and thank you so much. So, in 1964, I was 6. I Wanna Hold Your Hand was on my sister's transistor radio. Lyndon Johnson was president. Oh, the Ford Motor Company released the Mustang. And the best movie ever made hit the big screen. Mary Poppins. I mean, come on, what 6-year-old didn't want their sidewalk chalk to come alive with their creations? And who didn't need an umbrella with a talking parrot to take you over rooftops? I gotta tell you, I am still looking for that luggage that will allow a full-length mirror and a coat rack. I was all things Poppins. Truly, all things Poppins. I even took her to college. No kidding. You remember the tea party on the ceiling?
I love to laugh. Loud and long and clear. I love to laugh.
It's getting worse every year. Oh, of course, we weren't drinking tea in college. And the more we drank, the worse the lyrics became. But I was all things Poppins. So imagine my surprise when in 1978 I'm on my way to graduate school and I'm in a little cafe in Sun Valley, Idaho, and I open up the paper and the ad, full page ad, is from Jane and Michael Banks.
Oh, gee.
You must be sweet, you must be pretty, sort of witty and kind of whatever. And I read it and I went, oh my God, I have to answer the ad. I didn't want to be a nanny. Come on, I was in graduate school. Come on, I didn't want to be a nanny. But I was one of 70 women who answered the ad. Yeah. So that started my 3-year odyssey as Nanny Annie. And I will have you know that to my knowledge, those 40-something-year-old women now are not in therapy because of me. Anyway, we're still Facebook friends. Isn't that so cool that I can be connected? It's so cool. Anyway. So fast forward to 1994, my dear mother Priscilla is dying of breast cancer. And one day in her hospice care, she says, honey, promise me you'll keep in touch with Mary and Enid. Mary and Enid had been her friends since 1925. I mean, preschool. And I said, of course, they were our aunties. You know, you all have those, right? They were our aunties. And I said, of course I will, of course. So my mom got it. She was breaking up the band. So she needed someone to be in touch with them. So every Sunday, unless I was out of the country, from 1994 until their passing, I called these gals. And if I didn't, you can be sure they called me. So on one of these calls, my Auntie Mary, who was also my godmother, and I didn't really know her family, I just knew her, said, my granddaughter is getting married in Bordeaux, France. And I'm like, oh my God, how cool is that? And she's like, yeah, but I don't think I'm gonna go. I'm 85 and I have trouble with, clotting when I fly, so I don't think I'm gonna go. I said, oh, I'll tell you what, Auntie, if you decide to go and you need someone to go with you, I'm in. I'm totally in. It's your one and only granddaughter, I'm in. She goes, oh, honey, I wouldn't want to trouble you.
Yeah, right.
Bordeaux, France. Okay, it may have started my purveyor of love thing, by the way, I'm just saying. So weeks go by on these Sunday phone calls, and she finally says, okay, we'll go. I said, I'm in, but we gotta do 3 days in Paris. I'm gonna fly all that way. Can we just do 3 days in Paris? She says, okay, we'll do 3 days in Paris. So planes, trains, and automobiles. I get her there, alive, at this beautiful vineyard in Bordeaux that her son, who I didn't know, had rented for all of the U.S. visitors. And we're so excited, driving on the wrong side of the road, doing the whole thing. We're excited to be there. There's one problem. Mary forgot to tell them we were coming. So the 86-year-old grandmother and the help were quickly put on cots in the room off the kitchen with the excess booze and the luggage in the pantry. Increasingly awkward in Bordeaux. But I'm a glass half full kind of girl, so we made it work because it was just so much fun crashing her granddaughter's wedding. And then at the night on this French castle on the veranda watching everyone dance. Mary in her beautiful dyed red hair at 80, almost 86, leans over to me and says, "I can't wait for Paris." And I leaned into her and said, "Me too." So we had this tiny little room in the pension underneath the Sacré-Cœur in Montmartre, close to the metro. And during the mornings, we would travel together and see the sights. And in the afternoon, she would nap. And that would give me freedom. So this one day, I hooked it over to the Louvre. I was so excited. I arrived, it was during the time of the Da Vinci Code. And I've got to tell you, I was the only white woman of size in the entire Louvre. And because it was, for some reason, everyone was Asian. So I towered over them at 5'4", and I didn't have a book. And I was very, very white. But I thought, if I go through and find someone who is speaking English, I'm gonna hone in. I'm just gonna move over. I'm gonna be inconspicuous, look at something else, and hear what they're saying about whatever they're watching. So it was at the Wings of Victory. It's in a stairwell, and I'll never forget it. He was saying, an Englishman was saying, "Oh, and the way her gown floats beyond her, and she has her hand pressed against her lips, otherwise known as the Nike." And I thought, Eureka. So I started to follow this little tour of 5 people actually, and I started to follow them. I thought I was doing a pretty good job. But then at Venus de Milo, there was a tap on my shoulder. And this short, sophisticated guy in a blue velour, I don't know, what were they, leisure suit? You know, blue velour. It was like a jogging suit, but you'd never jog in it. You know what I mean? And a Marina Del Rey ball cap tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Would you like to join us?" And I said, "Oh my God, yes, thank you so much. Heck yeah, if you don't mind." So I became the fifth wheel. Now it was this couple in the blue velour suits and the Marina Del Rey ball caps matching. And then there was Louis Vuitton and, yeah, no kidding, they were dressed to the nines. And then there was the American in TJ Maxx. And I found out later that our tour guide was in fact one of the curators of the Louvre. So I had the best 3 hours of my life. And I tried really hard to contain myself and not ask many questions and kind of sit on my hands the whole time because they were British. And it was clear I was loud. So I really tried to behave. It was at the Mona Lisa. If you've ever been there, it's a huge room, tiny painting. And we're looking at it, and the curator is telling us all the Da Vinci stories about the Mona Lisa and why, and the smile and the crookedness and the colors and all that. And the woman in the blue velour suit leans over and says, "Will you be coming home with us too, dear?" Now, of course, I know she's being sarcastic, but it sounded so great in that accent. I immediately turned to her and said apologetically, "Oh, no, it's my auntie's 86th birthday, and I've got to get back. She's waiting for me, but oh, I have so enjoyed this afternoon. Thank you for letting me tag along. This has been so great." And then without filter or hesitation, I said, "Mary Poppins?" And Julie Andrews took my hand. Oh my God! She said, "Blake gifted me a private tour of the Louvre for my 78th birthday, and you managed to invite yourself in." To which I said, I love to laugh. Because in that moment, I was freaking 6. You know how you walk away from somewhere and say, oh, I could have said something so much more articulate, like, don't you need a house on the Cape? I mean, come on! So I'm like, she introduced me to the other couple. I don't know who they were. Blake kissed me on the cheek, and I thought, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I shook the curator's hand. I gotta go. My auntie, it's her birthday. It's 86. And I skipped the football fields of the Louvre, because you know they bury that Mona Lisa. Hoping to hear any English so I could say, Mary Poppins is with Mona Lisa! You gotta go check it out! But no. So I get back to our little pension, and Mary is now pacing because she's afraid that she's 86 in Paris and I've abandoned her. And I run in and go, oh my God, you won't believe what happened. I just met Julie Andrews at the Louvre, and you, of all people, who gave me all those cool Mary Poppins things all my life and have always just supported my addiction to this woman, should get how important this crazy chance meeting was. And Mary, in all her decorum, says, well, I had a pretty great day too. Okay, what happened to you? She goes, my grandson called and sang happy birthday to me. Wait, awkward in Bordeaux? She said, yeah. Here? Yeah. How did he know? I don't know. Well, happy birthday to you. I think you just trumped my Julie Andrews story. Let's go out. That's my story. Thank you all so much for supporting this great event, and Don and Karen and their efforts. And we are doing more storytelling in Woods Hole in September, so Woods Hole Theater Company, so please feel free to come down to that. That's the 21st and 22nd, or 20th and 21st, I'm not quite sure. But look forward to it. We do 10-minute stories down there. So we'll look forward to seeing you, and thank you and blessings to the newlyweds and to their son.
That was awesome, and thank you, everybody. That's going to do it for tonight, and we really appreciate you coming out and supporting us, and to your son as well. God bless him. Okay, and everybody, thanks again, and if you feel like having a cocktail before you go, feel free. All right, take care. Thanks a lot.